I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I haven't spoken to my mother in 6 years. Her name is Callie. She raised me alone in a quiet town outside Grand Rapids, Michigan, after my dad left when I was 5. I grew up believing he was a selfish loser who bailed on us and never looked back. That's how she explained it whenever I asked. Just those words, selfish loser. No photos, no phone number, not even a full name, really. Just your father. Callie was a nurse, always tired, always working, always coming home in scrubs with that sour hospital smell and a short fuse. She wasn't physically abusive or anything like that, but she was never really there either. She'd say things like, "You're lucky I even come home at all, and don't ask for more than I can give." So I stopped asking. I figured out early that I had to handle things on my own. She never taught me how to cook or drive or do taxes. I learned most of that stuff by watching YouTube videos or asking kids at school. School was the one place I actually liked being. I liked the structure, the rules, the routine. I liked knowing what was expected of me. I especially liked science. There was this environmental science unit in 8th grade that hooked me. I even stayed after class to clean up beakers and ask more questions. But the idea of me doing anything with that, Callie shut it down fast. She didn't let me join any after-school activities. Said it was a waste of time and money. I remember crying in the hallway once when the robotics club list went up and my name wasn't on it. I had signed up. The teacher told me later someone called and removed my name. I already knew who it was. By high school, Callie started pushing me towards something practical. She wanted me to do a certified nursing assistant program that the school ran in partnership with a local hospital. She told me college was a scam, that student loans would ruin my life, and that nursing assistants made decent money. When I said I wanted to go into environmental engineering, she laughed. Not just a small laugh. She laughed like I had told a joke. Then she said, "You're not smart enough for that kind of career. Don't set yourself up to fail." So I took the nursing aid classes. I graduated, and she used her connections to get me a job at the same hospital where she worked. I didn't even get a say in it. The offer letter was on the kitchen table one morning. She made it sound like a huge favor, like she'd pulled strings for me. I said thank you. I didn't know what else to do. She told me to stay at home to save money, but she charged me $900 a month in rent. Groceries were split 50-50. Even household stuff like paper towels and light bulbs were my half. Later, I found out she had refinanced the house and maxed out 2 credit cards. I wasn't helping with the bills. I was bailing her out. The only reason I didn't lose my mind was because of Kai. We'd been friends since sophomore year. He was the kind of person who knew how to spot when someone was drowning, even when they weren't making a sound. He kept telling me I was wasting my potential, that I was more than just a girl in scrubs changing bedpans. I didn't believe him at first, but then he started sneaking me printouts of community college classes. One day, he handed me a night class schedule with 3 words underlined: "You can start here." I enrolled without telling anyone. Just one class, Intro to Environmental Systems, paid out of pocket. Went straight from my shift at the hospital to a night campus across town. It was exhausting, but it felt like I could breathe for the first time. When Callie found out, she went nuclear. She said I was ungrateful, disloyal, reckless. She called me a failure, said I'd never survive on my own, told me to quit and focus on real life. When I refused, she kicked me out. I was 22 when I moved into a tiny apartment with Kai. The place had water stains on the ceiling and the oven barely worked, but it was mine. I kept working full-time and kept taking classes, slowly, a couple at a time. I learned how to budget, learned how to fix a broken garbage disposal, learned how to sleep 4 hours a night, and still show up for both school and work. Callie cut me off completely. No birthday texts, no calls, not even a card when I graduated with my associate's degree. She told people I had chosen my path. I guess I had. I transferred to a university 2 years later, finished my degree in environmental engineering at 26. Took a job at a small firm in the city, and for the first time I felt like I was actually building something, my own life, from the ground up. I haven't looked back in years. No contact, no updates, nothing. At least until last week, when a stranger called me out of nowhere and said she was married to the father I was told had disappeared. That's when everything started to unravel. The call came on a Tuesday, around lunch. I was in the break room with half a sandwich in my hand when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. Then it rang again. Same number. Something about the persistence made me step outside and answer. The woman on the line introduced herself as Dana. She told me she was married to a man named Thomas. That name didn't mean anything to me at first. Then she said he was my father. At first, I thought it had to be a scam. I asked where she got my number. She said Thomas had hired a private investigator to find me, and when they finally tracked down my full name and workplace, he got sick before he could reach out. Cancer. Fast-moving. He passed away 3 months ago. Dana found the investigator's file among his things and decided to call me herself. I agreed to meet her the next day at a cafe near my apartment. It was a small place I'd been to before, the kind where the menu is handwritten on a chalkboard. She was already sitting at a corner table when I arrived. Mid-50s, kind eyes, a folder on the table next to a cardboard box. She didn't waste time. She opened the folder and laid out a stack of envelopes, all addressed to me, all stamped with things like refused, returned to sender, or address unknown. She said Thomas had been sending letters and small gifts every year, trying to reach me. Every single one had come back. There were photos too, baby pictures of me I had never seen. One of them showed me in a car seat, a man kneeling beside me with the same green eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. There was a birthday card with a childish drawing inside, scribbled with the words from Dad. Another envelope had a letter from when I was 16, a printed email. It was from Thomas to Callie, begging to be allowed just one phone call with me. Dana said he had been in prison when I was little, 2 years for a non-violent charge. She didn't say what it was, and I didn't ask. When he got out, he tried to reconnect. Callie refused. He kept trying, for over a decade. She slid the box across the table next. It was taped shut. I took it home instead of opening it there. Inside, there were more letters, more photos. A wooden bracelet with tiny beads, each one carved with my initials. Dana said he made it in prison art class. There was also a copy of a tuition offer. Apparently, when he found out where I lived, he contacted a local community college and offered to pay for my first semester. The college confirmed it, Dana said. They even sent the paperwork. But nothing ever came to me, because Callie made sure it didn't. I sat on my living room floor for hours with that box. Then I started tearing open every storage bin I had from childhood. There was an old dresser I brought from Callie's house years ago. Behind the bottom drawer, stuffed between the wood and the back panel, I found a stack of envelopes. Some were postmarked from Florida, some from Illinois, all addressed to me. None of them opened. The one that got me was a small package with a faded sticker that read Happy Sweet 16. Inside was a silver necklace shaped like a tree. There was no card. I called Kai and told him to come over. He didn't ask questions, just showed up with takeout and sat down beside me. We went through every letter, every photo, every page of every notebook in that box. One of the letters talked about how Thomas was learning to make furniture. Another described a road trip he took with Dana to see the Great Lakes. Every story circled back to one thing. He wanted me to know him, and I never got the chance. That night, we laid everything out on my living room floor like puzzle pieces. Kai took photos. We started sorting the items by year, matching them to what I remembered. I showed him the printed email from when I was 16 and realized that was the same year Callie took my phone and told me I was grounded for sneaking out. I hadn't snuck out, but my phone disappeared for 2 months. I asked Kai if he remembered when I got that scholarship brochure in the mail that vanished before I could apply. He did. We were 17. Callie said she threw it out because it looked fake. There was a pattern forming, and it was bigger than I thought. Callie didn't just lie. She made sure to erase every trace of him. Every letter. Every gift. Every attempt to reach me. I grew up thinking my father didn't care, didn't try, didn't want me. But he never stopped trying. That night, I took a marker and wrote 3 words on the box. This is proof. Then I picked up a notepad and started writing down every year of my life. Not what I remembered, but what was missing. All the gaps. All the things I was told to forget. All the pieces Callie never wanted me to have. This wasn't just about a box or a bunch of old letters. This was about an entire life that got rewritten behind my back. And now I was going to find out everything she erased. Every single lie. Every single time she stole something from me. I was going to uncover all of it. Then I was going to make her watch me put it back together. Without her. The next morning, I pulled out a legal pad and started listing every adult who might have known what was going on when I was a kid. I didn't expect to get much. Most people either moved away or were too distant to care. But I figured if my father was really showing up year after year, someone had to notice. First, I drove to my old neighborhood. The house next to ours used to belong to an older woman named Mrs. Noren. Her front porch always smelled like menthols and soup. I parked across the street and waited until I saw her take her trash out. She still walked with that same slow shuffle. I got out and called her name, and when she looked up, her whole face lit up. She invited me inside without hesitation. The living room hadn't changed. Same lace curtains, same framed cross-stitch of the 10 Commandments above the couch. I asked if she remembered ever seeing anyone visit our house when I was little. She did. She said a man used to park across the street around the same time every year. He never came to the door when I was outside, but he always left something in the mailbox and walked away looking miserable. He had tattoos on his arms, but he didn't look scary, just tired. She said one year she asked Callie about it, and Callie told her he was nobody important. Next, I tracked down the old school librarian. Miss Avery had retired years ago but still volunteered at the city library downtown. I found her shelving books and asked if she remembered me. She did. I told her I recently learned more about my father and asked if she had ever seen him. She said yes, once, at a middle school science fair. He showed up with a small gift bag and stood near the entrance until Callie confronted him. The teachers told her he wasn't on the approved visitor list. He left without saying a word. Callie told the school he wasn't allowed near me due to court orders. I checked. No such orders exist. I drove straight to the post office after that and filed a mail inquiry. The clerk couldn't give me names but confirmed that, years ago, someone requested that any mail from a specific sender address be marked undeliverables and returned. That address matched one of the envelopes I had found behind the dresser. I didn't stop there. I looked up one of my old teachers, Mr. Deming, who used to teach freshman English. I found his email on the school's alumni site and asked if he remembered a man trying to contact the school when I was in 9th grade. He did. He said someone had called asking to schedule a parent-teacher meeting. Callie called back within the hour and told the office there was no father involved. The request was dropped. And Stantia, everywhere I looked, there was something. Some scrap of evidence showing she didn't just lie to me. She blocked every possible way for the truth to get through. Then I remembered something that made my stomach twist. Back when I was still living at home and working at the hospital, I never got personal mail at the apartment. I used to think nothing of it, figured all the important stuff came electronically. But now I wondered. I called the hospital's Human Resources Department under the excuse of updating my records. I asked if there was ever a request to redirect mail. The woman on the phone confirmed that, years ago, my mother had asked that all non-work correspondence be given to her due to a sensitive family situation. I went back to the storage bins that night and pulled out a beat-up shoebox full of old high school papers. Tucked behind a stack of random notes was a thick envelope. It was addressed to me from a scholarship foundation I didn't recognize. Inside was an acceptance letter for a full ride to a summer pre-college engineering program at a university 3 hours away. The letter was dated 2 months before graduation. I checked my old yearbooks. That summer, I was working doubles at the hospital, saving for community college. I never saw this letter, never applied, never responded. Callie must have opened it, pulled the rest of the documents, and buried the envelope before I ever knew it came. I didn't sleep that night. I started writing everything down, every person I'd spoken to, every document, every memory that now had another side. I opened a new notebook and started organizing it into years, dates, names. I labeled envelopes, taped copies of letters into pages, and wrote notes underneath. The next day, I visited my old high school and asked if I could look at some of my archived records. The counselor was new, but she let me review old files. I found one dated from senior year. There was a note, parent objected to out-of-state opportunities due to financial and safety concerns. Another file from junior year had a comment, parent declined scholarship recommendation request. I took photos of everything. Later that week, I called Dana again and told her what I'd been doing. She asked if I'd received a final letter Thomas had written before he passed. She had forgotten to include it in the original box. She mailed it to me. It arrived 2 days later in a plain white envelope with my name handwritten on the front. The paper inside was folded once. The letter was short, just 5 words. Live big. Make her watch. I pinned it to my wall. Top center. Every move I made next was going to start from there. I used 2 vacation days and filed a request for personal leave under the excuse of travel and family matters. My manager didn't ask questions. I packed a small suitcase, booked a rental 30 minutes outside my hometown, and turned off location sharing on everything. No one, not coworkers, not old classmates, and definitely not Callie, knew I was back. The rental was a basement unit with its own entrance and a fold-out sofa bed. The furniture was mismatched and the heater rattled when it kicked on, but it gave me space and silence. I brought a corkboard, thumbtacks, and the manila folders I had been collecting. Everything went on the wall. Letters from Thomas, school documents, mail records. I started building a timeline, year by year. My first stop was the high school. I signed in as part of the alumni outreach program. The secretary found my name on the list and handed me a visitor badge. I asked if I could look at any non-confidential teacher notes or archived files from my time there, especially anything relating to academic performance. She gave me a binder to flip through. There were 2 notes from my sophomore year math teacher. One said, student qualifies for district-level gifted math program, transportation unconfirmed. Another added later said, pulled from workshop, parent cited scheduling concerns. I remembered being excited about that program. I never understood why it just disappeared. I walked past the science wing and ran into someone I didn't expect, Mr. Darrow, my old chemistry teacher. He was walking with a cart full of lab kits. He recognized me immediately. After some small talk, he pointed at the visitor badge and said, "You were one of the brightest students your mom wouldn't let shine." He didn't mean it as a dig, just said it like it was a fact. After that, I went to the public library. Same small building. Same smell of old books and carpet cleaner. I asked the librarian, Mrs. Elser, if they kept public scholarship listings from previous years. She led me to the back room, where the community grant records were stored. She pulled out a heavy ledger from the year I graduated and flipped to the page for science scholarships. My name was listed for the local foundation's Science Advancement Grant. Award amount $3,000. Status, declined. Handwritten note next to it read, family declined on her behalf. The librarian paused and looked at me. She remembered the letter arriving and said she was surprised when it wasn't claimed. It had been a big deal for the town, first student to win it in 3 years. No one ever told me I'd even been nominated. I left the library and drove to my old street. The houses all looked smaller than I remembered. The one I grew up in looked the worst. Paint peeling off the shutters. Roof patched with a blue tarp held down by bricks. Bam. Lawn overgrown. A cracked flower pot still sitting on the porch. Her car was in the driveway, same one from when I left. I didn't go to the door. I stayed across the street, snapped one photo, and left. I needed to see it, but I didn't need to be seen. Back at the rental, I taped a new piece of paper to the wall, this one with a title, What She Took. I started listing everything, from letters to scholarships to science fairs. I wrote down every name of every teacher, every date of every letter, every time I remembered asking a question and getting no answer. Then I circled Callie's name in the middle of the board, connecting every item back to her with red string. That night, I called Dana. I told her I was digging into old addresses connected to Thomas. She said there were a few places they lived when they were still moving around for work. She texted me a list, 5 addresses total. One of them caught my eye. It matched the return label from a small box I'd found hidden under the floorboard vent in my old room. Inside that box had been a carved wooden snowflake and a note written in block letters, "Happy holidays, even if you never get this." I circled that address and read. I looked it up. It was in a town 3 hours south, near the state line. I found a mechanic shop and a small post office in the area. The return label had a zip code that matched. That was going to be my next stop. I packed the letter, the box, and a copy of the timeline. Then I pinned the final note from Thomas back to the wall, right next to the corkboard full of evidence. 5 words in all caps. Live big. Make her watch. And that's exactly what I was going to do. I left before sunrise. The town Dana mentioned was almost 3 hours south, tucked just past a state highway lined with farmland and storage sheds. The roads narrowed the farther I drove. By the time I reached the address, I was surrounded by a neighborhood that looked like it hadn't been touched since the early 2000s, vinyl siding, faded porch flags, and cracked driveways. The house was a single-story ranch with green shutters and a rusted mailbox. I parked across the street and double-checked the return label from the letter I'd found in my old room. Same address. I walked up and knocked. The woman who answered looked to be in her late 40s. When I introduced myself and explained why I was there, she didn't seem surprised. She told me she bought the house from a man named Thomas around 8 years ago. Said he moved out in a hurry and left a few boxes behind in the attic. Most had been tossed, but one box was tucked into a crawl space. She asked if I wanted it. The shoebox was taped shut and covered in dust. I took it out to my car and opened it in the passenger seat. Inside were gas station receipts, a church bulletin, a concert flyer from the year I turned 15, and a leather-bound journal with frayed corners. The journal had no dates, just entries, some short, some a full page. The first few were lists, places he had driven to, names of schools, comments about trying again next month. One entry stood out. It described him driving by a bookstore in my town. He had heard I liked reading. He parked across the street and waited, hoping to catch a glimpse of me. When I came out with a bag of books, he wrote that I looked taller, older. He almost got out of the car, but he didn't. He wrote, didn't want to scare her, didn't want to give her mother a reason to call the police again. I sat in my car with the journal in my lap and didn't move for an hour. The next morning, I visited the only mechanic shop in town. The name matched one from a pay stub I'd found in the shoebox. Inside, a man in his 60s with thick glasses and oil-stained hands was fixing a lawnmower on a workbench. I asked if he remembered Thomas. He nodded immediately, called him the quiet guy who always showed up early and never complained about overtime. He pointed to a wall covered in old photos and flyers. There was a group shot from a company picnic. Thomas was in the back row, arms crossed, baseball cap pulled low. The man introduced himself as Jared. Said Thomas worked there for a few years and only left when his health started getting worse. He mentioned how Thomas would always pick up extra shifts and save every dollar. He had once told Jared he was putting money aside for his daughter's future. Jared never met me, but he said Thomas carried a folded-up photo of a girl with a backpack and curly hair. Said it was me. Before I left, Jared handed me a broken laptop. Said Thomas left it in his locker when he quit and never came back for it. No one had the password, and no one felt right throwing it out. Back at the rental, I called Kai. He asked me to send photos of the laptop model. He walked me through some steps remotely, and after 2 hours of digging, he managed to unlock the hard drive. The folders were a mess, but inside one labeled LJ were several draft letters. Some were just one paragraph. Some were 3 pages long. All started the same. If you're reading this, I hope you got this one. One of the letters ended with a line that made my chest tighten. I hope you know none of this was your fault. There were also spreadsheets, dozens of them. He had been tracking local colleges, comparing tuition fees, scholarship deadlines, even average acceptance rates. He had notes in the margins, things like ask counselor if GPA minimum changed and research transportation routes to campus. He had been doing everything Callie used to say was too complicated for someone like me to figure out. But she hadn't been doing any of it. He had. Before leaving town, I bought a thank you card and filled it out for Jared. I slipped a small donation inside and dropped it off at the shop with the words for your kindness and memory. Back at the rental, I stared at the corkboard again. Dozens of red lines connected dates, names, moments. I added a new note to the center, just beneath where I'd circled Callie's name. In capital letters, I wrote, everything ends with her. Then I underlined it twice. Isaac. I got back to the city late Sunday afternoon. The corkboard, folders, and journals stayed packed in the backseat. I didn't unload anything. I just went inside, microwaved some leftover pasta, and texted my childhood friend Marley to meet me for dinner later in the week. I hadn't seen her in over a year, but we'd always managed to keep in touch through occasional messages. We met at a quiet diner near her apartment. The place hadn't changed much. Same leather booths, same cracked jukebox. We ordered sandwiches and talked about work, the usual life updates. But somewhere between the second round of fries and the check, she leaned in and asked about my mom. I told her some of it, not everything, just enough. She wasn't surprised. She said Callie always gave her an odd feeling. She remembered how I was never allowed to attend sleepovers, even when everyone else did. Marley's birthday parties always had one less person because Callie made excuses last minute. She remembered one time in high school when we passed by a red truck parked at the end of the school lot. A man waved. I didn't see it, but Marley did. She said she thought it was someone's parent. Now she's almost sure it was Thomas. After we said goodbye, I sat in my car thinking about something that had been bothering me for a while. A few years back, I started getting strange spam calls about unpaid bills I didn't recognize. I always assumed they were scams, but the call Dana made had come through a similar unknown number. It made me wonder if maybe some of those calls had been real. I bought a prepaid burner phone from the drugstore the next morning and used it to call Callie's landline. She still had the same number, probably had it since the house was first built. I masked my voice and pretended to be a debt collector. She picked up, sounded irritated. As soon as I gave a fake name and mentioned unpaid balances connected to my legal name, she snapped. She doesn't live here anymore. I told you people to stop calling about her. She didn't even pretend not to know the name. She jumped straight into damage control, which told me exactly what I needed. I pulled my credit report that night and went line by line. Most of it looked clean, but then I saw 2 credit cards that had been opened when I was 19. I was still living at home back then. I didn't recognize the banks, and I never opened anything under those names. The charges were small: gas stations, grocery stores, electric bills. Just enough to avoid suspicion. Just enough to make it easy to ignore. I didn't confront her. I didn't call. I went to each of the accounts, filed disputes, and submitted identity theft claims. I froze my credit. I added fraud alerts. Then I requested physical statements, so I could build a full record for my files. Quiet damage control. No shouting match. No warning. That week, I scheduled a meeting with my manager. I asked for a transfer, not a demotion, not a quit, just a move to one of the smaller city branches about 90 minutes away, closer to Dana. I framed it as personal growth and proximity to family, and within 2 days it was approved. I didn't tell anyone about the move. I canceled the lease on my storage unit and picked up the last few boxes I had stored in case I ever went back home. Most of it was junk, but one box had something I'd almost forgotten about, a sealed envelope I had written at 18. It was an assignment from an English elective class. The teacher asked us to write a personal essay about what we saw our lives becoming. I never turned it in. I hid it the night I signed my first college application without telling Callie. The last line of the essay was written in blue ink. One day, I'll be someone she never got to know. That same day, I printed out a copy of my university degree. Folded it once. No note, no envelope, no return address. I drove to my old neighborhood. Didn't stop the car. Just slowed down enough to slide the folded degree into her mailbox and kept driving. The yard looked worse than before. Bushes overgrown, porch light burnt out, paint flaking from the front door. Her car was gone. Maybe she was working. Maybe she wasn't. Didn't matter. I wasn't there to be seen. I didn't look back until I was 2 blocks away. Then I checked the rearview mirror and watched until the house disappeared behind a bend in the road. I didn't leave a forwarding address. No one knew where I was going next except the people I chose. I turned the phone off that night. Not the burner, the real one. Just for a few hours. And for the first time in a long time, it stayed quiet.